Hare Krishna. What I learned from this experience is sometimes with all our plans, we have all these electrical engineers and all these fundraising programs. Still, things will inevitably happen that are beyond our control. In such circumstances, we shouldn't get disturbed. Sometimes we need to adjust ourselves to the environment around us. Whereas if we're attached or obsessed with changing the environment around us according to our plan, then inevitably we are on the road to anxiety. That's the lesson of the microphone. But there's another lesson I learned that I'm remembering at this moment. Just last week I was in Jagannath Puri, which is the eastern coast of India, one of the holiest of all holy places of India. And we had every evening there was about 7,000 people coming to our lectures, and I was speaking so many spiritual things. But sometimes the most ordinary, mundane, apparently mundane experiences give us really profound spiritual lessons. Can I share one with you? So I was reading scriptures and I was getting all these ancient messages, and on this day I was sitting on the seashore. It's the Bay of Bengal. Has anyone here been to Jagannath Puri? The ocean there is very, very rough. Large waves. But the large waves aren't so dangerous. What's dangerous is the undercurrent. Because it's deceiving. The big wave comes and you think that that's the challenge. But then after the wave goes and it gets a little peaceful, that this undercurrent pulls you to the middle of the ocean. And there in Jagannath Puri, it's very, very common that people drown. Even there was one person, he was a Russian lifeguard, and he was pulled by the undercurrent. And somebody had to come and save him. So in this world, sometimes the greatest challenges of life are what can't be seen. The external circumstances are challenges, but the greatest challenges are in our own minds. How we interpret things is what is going to determine our experience. So on this day I was sitting in the seashore, and it was early morning, just around the time of sunrise, and I saw a simple fisherman, a little wooden boat with oar, and he wanted to go to make a living. That's all he knows. Very simple man, probably no education, and at least in schools. And he was trying to get that boat into the Bay of Bengal. He was walking it in. A massive wave came and knocked him over, and the boat flipped over a few times, went back onto the shore. So he dragged the boat again in, and then another huge wave came and hit him. And he went flying back, and the boat went flying in the air. And they pulled the boat again. And he got a little deeper and a little deeper, and he got on it, and he started trying to row, and then another wave came, and he was just being bounced around by these waves for about a half hour. He didn't give up. He just kept trying. And eventually, he got into deeper waters where it was completely peaceful. Then he was very happily, he could go any way he wanted. So in this world, when our perception of life, when our consciousness is shallow. Shallow means we're very much attached to the superficialities of this world. Where our meaning in life is based on ever-changing experiences. It's a world of dualities. Happiness, distress, pleasure, pain, honor, dishonor, success, failure, victory, defeat, heat, cold, drought, flood. That's the inevitable environment of this world. And when our consciousness is in a shallow state, then we're so much affected by everything. This is the basic teaching of Bhagavad Gita. We're very much elated when things go our way or better. But there's a problem with that. To the degree you're elated when things go your way, to that same degree, things are not going my way. We're disturbed when they don't go our way. Believe it or not, this is not rehearsed. Apuryamanam achala pratishtam. Bhagavad Gita explains when we go deep into the ocean, because of its depth, it's not disturbed by the ever-changing condition of the rivers that's flowing into it. The Bhagavad Gita teaches like this. In India, in the dry season, sometimes the rivers dry up and nothing goes into the ocean or little streams. And that same river, in the monsoon rains, sometimes 2-3 miles wide, pouring into the ocean. Now a little puddle of water, whatever water comes into that, if the sun is shining very bright and there's no water coming in, that puddle is going to just dry up into nothing. And any water that comes into it, it's going to affect it a lot. But for the ocean, it makes no difference because of its own depth. So real peace, shanti, real happiness, ananda, is not meant to be found by external circumstances. The whole idea of spirituality, yoga, religion, is to find that peace, to find that happiness within ourselves. And when we find it, nothing could disturb it. For one who finds that peace within themselves, our happiness is self-sufficient. And in that state of consciousness, each and every one of us could actually truly be vessels of grace, of compassion, to bring happiness to others. That is within all of us. Bhagavad Gita teaches that a happy person is one who is enlightened within, inspired within, and finds joy within. And then through our duties, through our interrelationships, through our responsibilities within this world, we have such an incredibly beautiful purpose. We're trying to share what God has given us within our hearts with others. Not with a sectarian bias that I'm better than others. Because you see, unless we're genuinely humble and grateful, we cannot access the depth of that peace and that joy within us. Because what everyone is looking for is pleasure. Anandamayo bhyashat. And the only thing that can give pleasure to the heart is to love and be loved. That's what everyone is seeking. But it's not easy to find it. That's just the way the world is. And we have to adjust to that reality. It's not cheap. That fisherman, right now in Puri, it's early in the morning. He's probably struggling with those waves. He does it every day. It's not that what he wants, he gets to the peaceful part of the ocean. For the rest of that day, he's a fisherman. He fishes. I don't eat fish. We don't, many of us don't, but he does like that. But he's there, but then in the evening he has to come in. The next day he has to go through the exercise again. But why? Why is he willing to do it? Because he knows he can. He's experienced what's on the other side of those. He's experienced what it's like to go beyond the shallow waters. And every day when we have our sadhana, our spiritual practice, we're trying to go into the depths of our own true being. Yoga, religio, to actually reconnect with that higher pleasure, the reservoir of all pleasure. In the Vedic literatures, there are many names of God, but one that is so very important and so dear is Krishna. Krishna means the all-attractive. One time, some years ago, I was sitting on a college campus, and a very enthusiastic preacher, he told me I was going to hell. And I said, why am I going to hell? Because, nobody really wants to go to hell. But he was preaching. He was really screaming. And I was just sitting on the grass with one of these little harmoniums singing. There was 2-3 students around me. There was about 150 around him. And he was telling each and every one of them why they're going to hell. And one of them turned to me. I was about 20 yards away. They said, where's he going? He said, he's going to hell. They said, well, why don't you go tell him? So he started coming to me, and they all came to me. And I'm just a simple person. And suddenly I was surrounded by 150 people. And he screamed out, "You're going to hell." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. By that time, there was about 300 people in a circle around me. It was because in colleges, they like sports. It was like a match, a competition between an evangelic preacher and a Hare Krishna monk. So it was really exciting. I said, "Why am I going to hell?" He said, "Because you worship a false god." I said, "How do you know I worship a false god?" He said, "Because Krishna is a false god." I said to him, "Well, if I'm going to hell, where are you going?" And he said, "He's going to heaven." And he told me why. And everybody was listening, just waiting to see who's going to overcome the other. And I said, "Well, I think if you're going to heaven, I will be much happier in hell." To live forever with sectarian, hateful fanatics like you, I don't want to be there. And all 300 students were cheering. And he was kind of speechless. And then I said, "Do you know what Krishna means?" He said, "It means false god." I said, "Well, it's a Sanskrit word. It means all attractive." I said, "Is your God all beautiful?" He said, "Yes." "Is your God supremely powerful?" He said, "Yes, of course." "Is he the wealthiest?" He said, "Yes." "Does he know everything?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Is he all attractive?" He said, "Of course he's all attractive." I said, "That means your God is Krishna." Because Krishna means all attractive. Why are you so opposed to God being all attractive? And it's a long story, but eventually we became best friends. But that love, that supreme love of God, that is the nature of the soul, is to feel that love, to experience that love, to be a vessel of that love. That's our greatest potential. That's who we truly are. But why have we forgotten that? Because we're so distracted by so many shallow, superficial conceptions and goals. Certainly we have to live in this world and we have to perform our duties, and many of us have to work. We have to raise our children. We have to deal with so many challenges. But bhakti is to face those challenges with courage and humility from this place within our own minds, within our own hearts. Our motivation is to reciprocate with the love that we're experiencing within and to share it with others and to see that potential in others and to appreciate that potential in others. Then, even if we're sweeping a floor, even if we're cutting a potato, even if we're driving in a traffic jam, whatever we may be doing, it has profound, transcendent meaning and purpose. Because it's not what the circumstance of the action is. It's the place within our hearts from where we are being inspired and activated. So this is the lesson I learned from that little fisherman. Here in New York City, there are so many waves, so many undercurrents. But when we have values, and this is where life becomes meaningful and beautiful, when we have values that do not change under circumstances. It's called dharma. Dharma means eternal principles, unchanging principles. The principles of humility, compassion, morality, dedication, and seva. The great value of the opportunity to serve. Unfortunately, in the world today, in so many places, people are so shallow, so superficial, so artificial, and so disconnected from their own selves that they get this undercurrent of the society's expectations and the values that they put on us. That if you have a lot of money, you are great. If your physical body is very attractive, you are great. If you conquer other opponents with your physical strength or your verbal prowess, you're great. And it's these external things and achievements that people value. And some people, just by their karma, just by their nature, they can't achieve those things, even if they try. You could become depressed. You could have an inferiority complex. You could be envious, jealous, angry. And if you do have the capabilities to actually achieve all these things, then people are going to envy you and they're going to try to destroy you because they want what you have. So it's a very unstable situation. But in the true principles of yoga, of spirituality, the higher dimensions of humanity, greatness is in the quality of one's character. In the Ramayana, there was a great king named Dasarath. These kings, they didn't have to run for office every 4 years. They didn't have to give in to powerful corporate people to give them donations for their next campaign. They were kings for life. And in the case of Dasarath, everybody loved him because he was such a good king. He really cared about people. He treated every one of his citizens like his own children, because they were. His attitude was, my being the king is Ram, or Krishna, or God. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Everything belongs to the Supreme. I'm just the caretaker. These are all God's children. It's God's property. I'm the caretaker. I must serve them. How I treat them is how I treat my beloved Lord. That's how a king felt toward all the citizens. That's how a parent would think about their children. This is not just my child. This is a beloved child of the Supreme, of the Divine, of Krishna, who's entrusted in my care. And how I treat this child is how I'm going to treat my Lord. My spiritual advancement, my progress is very much dependent on how I take care of God's child. And in marriage, this wife is Krishna's daughter entrusted in my care. This husband, it's not just my husband, it's God's son entrusted in my care. How we treat each other is integral to all of our spiritual progress. If we mistreat each other, how would you feel if someone mistreated your beloved child? That's a reality. This is a sense of responsibility. But what was the character of Dasarath? He's the king of all the land, thousands of miles in all directions, with no rival. And one sadhu, one simple holy man named Vishwamitra came. And Dasarath came off of his throne. He put Vishwamitra on his throne. He bowed down to him. And he said, this whole kingdom, because you are someone who loves God, this whole kingdom belongs to you. How can I serve you? Such a character. Nothing is mine. It's this type of character that the world longs for and yearns for. The more we experience, the more we're connected to that love, that bhakti within our hearts, where the ananda, the happiness of that, causes us to be detached. Detachment should not be misunderstood. Sometimes we think if a person's detached, they'll be negligent. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes detachment in a completely different way. When you're detached, you don't become negligent of your duties, your responsibilities, or your relationships. But you perform them without false ego, without a false sense of selfishness and arrogance. Then we perform our duties from a space which is motivated by compassion, by love, by devotion. And if things don't go our way, we keep trying, but we do not get discouraged. Because the real beauty of life is not externally what we achieve, but it's the quality of consciousness, it's the quality of our intention of trying to achieve it. That quality of the intention is the actual success of whatever we're pursuing. The external result is not the real success. It's how we strive to do it. Can I tell you a story? This is another story from Ramayana. I actually really like to tell this story. Should I tell the story? How many have heard the story of Ramayana? Please raise your hands. Radhanath is one of the greatest narrators of the Ramayana. And when he speaks, he's like a thunder cloud of enthusiasm and realizations. And I'd like to welcome some of my dear God brothers, Guru Gauranga Prabhu and Yogeshwar Prabhu and Badarayan Prabhu and Sharon Gannon and Ruth, and so many wonderful devotees are here. So in this particular story, I don't want to tell you the whole Ramayana because it's I think it's like 28,000 verses. So I'll just give a little reference. Sita is the beloved consort of Ram. She represents Mother Earth. She's the mother of all living beings on the spiritual platform. And Ram is like the father of all living beings, and they descended together into this world. Ravana was an incredibly powerful person. He had performed yoga processes to get supernatural powers. But his character was not right. You see, it's like that. Even if you perform yoga, the greatness of your yoga is not just, how expert you become, it's the intention of what you use it for. And that's the same with everything in life. So Ravana, he was conquering all directions. He practically created an entire kingdom where his palaces and his roads were made of gold. He was definitely the number one wealthiest person on the planet. And he had so much power. And he was so youthful. But greed, the nature of greed, the nature of selfish passion, it's like fire. The more you put fuel in fire, it gets hungrier and hungrier. We see in these wildfires in California now, it's not that the more they eat, they say, okay, I'm satisfied. The more they eat, the more they need to eat. That's the nature of fire. The more it consumes, the more it needs to consume, and the more power it has to consume. That's the way greed and selfishness is within our hearts. We can never be satisfied. Ravana was a symbol of that. He had everything anybody could possibly dream of and want, but he still wanted something more. So it's a beautiful story, but he kidnapped Sita when Ram was not present. And he had a supernatural power. He could fly in the sky. So he dragged her away and was going overhead. And not far from where our temple is in Mumbai, there's a holy place called Nasik. And close to there's a little forest. It's still there. I'd love to take you there. And what I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes took place right in this little secluded forest. There was a very old bird. He was a vulture. And he was really old. So he was just kind of like in retirement. He was just sitting there. And he happened to see Ravana overhead. He heard Sita's voice going, "Jatayu, Jatayu," which was his name. "Please tell Ram what has happened to me." And then she cried out, "But please do not try to stop him because you have no power to do so. Just tell Ram which direction I've been taken." Jatayu knew he didn't really have a chance against this very powerful warrior. But he could not just sit there and let this injustice happen without doing everything within his power. So he jumped up and attacked Ravana. And with all of his strength, he was fighting. And he gave it everything he had. And he was doing really good. But after some time, he got tired. And Ravana was at the peak of his youth. And he was so exhausted, Jatayu, he could hardly move. Meanwhile, Sita was put on the ground while this incredible battle was taking place. She was watching. Ravana took a sword. He cut off both wings of Jatayu. Cut off his legs. Jatayu fell to the ground, bleeding profusely. Sita, seeing what happened to this, she ran up to Jatayu. She held Jatayu in her arms. She was crying and crying and crying. "You were willing to sacrifice your life for me. You didn't have to do that." She showered her most intimate, motherly, affectionate blessings on Jatayu. And meanwhile, Ravana grabbed her and ripped her away from Jatayu and took her off in the sky to his kingdom. A short time later, Ram came looking for Sita. And he saw all this blood all around. And he saw this big vulture. And he was thinking, did he eat Sita? And Ram said, And Jatayu, he called out, "I'm Jatayu, I'm your devotee." And he explained everything. And Jatayu was on the verge of death. Ram put Jatayu on his head on his lap. And Ram was crying. He said, "There is no one more loved by me in the entire world than you. Such a great sacrifice you made to serve she who I love so much." He said, "On this very day, I bestow upon you the supreme perfection of eternal liberation, of ecstatic, intimate love for me in this spiritual world." And Jatayu, singing the names of Ram, looking at the beautiful face of Ram, he gave up his life. Ravana got what he wanted. He had it for a while. But in due course of time, he lost everything. Now, it's many generations, millenniums later. Who do we love, Jatayu or Ravana? Should we take a vote? We love Jatayu. Jatayu lost the battle but won the war. Ravana won the battle but lost the war. Jatayu, his greatness, which brought him the ultimate perfection of life and which brought him eternal fame in the hearts of millions of people who read these stories and discuss these stories, was the character of his integrity, the depth of his love. He was humble and he was fearless and he was determined and he was enthusiastic because he had such a good cause. And Ravana had determination and he had enthusiasm and he was quite courageous, but the wrong cause. So what makes a person great? What do we place on the altar of our aspirations in life that we hold sacred? Is it being an instrument of God's grace, God's love, living with integrity, compassion, detachment? From these selfish characteristics? Or is it just what I've achieved, what I have? But it isn't easy. Because when we're living in this shallow state, to reach the depths of that peaceful place in the ocean of our consciousness, where we're not disturbed, but where we're active with love, it takes the willingness. Vyavashayatmaka buddhir ekeha kudunandana bahut. Vyavashayatmaka buddhir ekeha kudunandana. We have to have determination. We have to have a resolution that, yes, this is my goal. And the various waves of challenges will come in this world. But if we face them, and we keep striving, we don't give up, we don't get discouraged, then very soon we will reach that place within our hearts where we connect with our own souls. And then all the changes of this world, we just deal with them with devotion. We're not overwhelmed by them. Death itself becomes just a change, another change in life. It's not a loss, it's a change. So it's important in order to keep our minds focused on that, on these values, so we're not distracted. We need each other. It's called sadhu sangam or satsang, where we come together to hear these wonderful stories, these wonderful teachings that kind of become like a compass in our life. Well, we understand the direction we want to go. We understand the values we want to cultivate. And everything else that comes to kind of challenge us. We're not disturbed. And even if we temporarily feel some disturbance, our purpose is not disturbed. And that's actually what's most important. The fisherman was battered by those waves, but his purpose was not disturbed. He kept trying and kept trying and kept trying, and eventually he made it, and he knew he would make it. And the Bhakti Center is a place beyond sectarian conceptions. We're coming together to reinforce that hope, that confidence, that faith, that there's a higher purpose that we could all be instruments of in our lives. New York City has a lot of waves. But actually, anywhere you go in the world, I go to little villages in India, and there's as many disturbances as New York City. You know, a poisonous snake comes into your house. Mosquitoes eat you. Your son gets malaria. There's nowhere you can go in this world where there's not disturbances. But there's one place you can go. Within your heart. Murli Dhar is playing his flute, calling us to that place. And Srila Prabhupada, he came here to the Lower East Side to share this gift with us, this matchless gift. I thank you very much. May I sing? Chant kirtan, or this chanting, is the most beautiful, powerful meditation that we can all share together. Because this divine sound vibration, the mantra, reconnects our consciousness with our original source. the source of all love, the source of all beauty, Krishna. So let us chant together with great feeling and attention. And if you like, you can dance.